YouTube, back at it again with another banger video. This time we're going to be taking a look at one of my all-time favorite comics. In my opinion, it may be a perfect comic, and there aren't many of those out there. It's the first appearance of Spider-Man. Not Spider-Man number 1. This is Amazing Fantasy number 15. We're looking at it in this Amazing Spider-Man Marvel Masterworks book. This is Spider-Man's first appearance and his origin story, and I love this book because of how much ground it covers. I mean, it tells the complete origin in only 11 pages. That's like half the first Spider-Man movie in 11 pages. So let's go through it. This cover was done, this is Jack Kirby on the cover, even though the main story is Steve Ditko. If you look in the back of this collection, it tells the story of the cover. Steve Ditko did a version of it, and they decided that it wasn't what they wanted, so they asked Jack to do a version. Yeah, here it is. They asked Jack Kirby to do a version, and that's the one that we see in the front of the book. So this would have been Steve Ditko's version. So this is the one we got. This is the iconic one. In the beginning of the story, we get this splash page. It introduces Spider-Man as a different type of hero, a teenage hero, which back in those days was more rare. You know, typically superheroes were adults, not people in high school. We learn that Peter doesn't have very many friends. They call him a professional wallflower here. But we get a look at his home life. We meet Uncle Ben and Aunt May. We see that she dotes on him, and we see that he's into science at school. He likes girls, but they don't like him. We meet Flash Thompson, his bully. He's in pretty much every movie adaptation. And he was a lot bigger character in these early books. We see he tries to invite some people to the science exhibit with him. They turn him down, and he has to go alone. And there are some differences between this first appearance of Spider-Man and the first movie. And I'll point those out as we go along. But this is one of them. You know, in the movie, it's a class field trip. In this book, he goes there alone. And he sees this experiment of radiation. There's a little spider that comes down between these two bolts, and it gets shocked. And it lands on Peter, bites him. These scientist guys are laughing at him because they're like, oh, it's too much. He must have a weak stomach. You know, as he's leaving, he's looking down at his hands, and we see he's looking at his fingertips. This reminds me of that scene in the movie where, the little hairs come up off his fingertips, and we see, a honk. Then the car comes around the corner and almost hits him, and he leaps out of the way and sticks to the wall. And this is where he finds out he can climb walls like a spider. He has the proportional strength of a spider. He can walk across a cable like a spider. And he makes that connection that he got powers from that spider. So at the end of the page, we're to the part where he sees the advertisement for the wrestling contest. $100 to a man who could stay in the ring 3 minutes with Crusher Hogan. You'll see that's another change that they made in the movie. This is Crusher Hogan. In the movie, it was Bonesaw, played by Macho Man Randy Savage. And also, I think it was $3,000 in the movie. You know, they had to up the price from $100. I don't think anybody's going to risk getting beaten up for $100. But, and also, they just had to, give Randy, Macho Man, a bigger part. Because, if you hire him, I mean, you got to make use of him. So this is our first look at his homemade suit, and I mean it's just like a mesh piece of cloth over his face. I don't know what that is. He doesn't have the spider theme going on yet like he does in the movie. And he gets spotted here by this like talent agency guy who's like, I'm gonna make this guy famous. He goes up to Peter. This is another change from the movie. Peter doesn't get ripped off from the wrestling guy. He gets paid in full. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that like 99% of the changes that they made in the movie are for the better. Even though this is a perfect comic, I think that the changes that they made were overall positive. All for except maybe the web shooters. I like the idea of him building these web shooters because it shows like the science part of the character, that he can create inventions. He still has powers. He can still stick to walls. He still has a spider sense. But this part of the character shows, incorporates that other side of him. And in the movies, it's organic webbing. It just comes like right out of his wrist. So back to the story. He makes a costume. He's keeping it secret from Uncle Ben and Aunt May. I love this panel of him testing out the web shooters. He's ready to go. And by this page, we're how far? How far are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages in. It's the end of part 1, and Spider-Man is completely formed. He's got the powers. He's got the suit. The only thing he doesn't have is like the motivation to become a superhero. So with the talent agency guy, he goes on TV. This is another change from the movie. The movies, he never goes on TV, any, late night shows. I think that was a good choice because, it really doesn't need to be here. It doesn't add much. And I think they can consolidate a lot of this stuff with the way they did it. The next page, we see, Peter's basically a big shot. These reporters are, asking him for interviews. There's people asking for autographs. This guy is offering to put him in movies. And Peter's, he's the big shot, the new kid in town, basically. And he's saying, "See my agent, boys, I'm busy." This is the part where the robber comes running past him, and the police guy is chasing him, and he's like, "Stop the thief, stop the thief." Peter lets him get away. And he's like, "Sorry, pal, that's your job. I'm through being pushed around by anyone. From now on, I just look out for number one. That means me." So there isn't that scene with the wrestling guy where he's like, "I fail to see how that's my problem." Throwing that right after he gets ripped off, he throws that back in that guy's face. That you stiffed me, so I'm not going to help you. In the original version, he's never stiffed on any money. He's just looking out for himself because of, in the beginning, how he was, mistreated and sort of ostracized from his friend group. That he's now that he's a big shot, he's completely selfish. And he's like, the police guy is like, "I ought to run you in. Save your breath, buddy. I got things to do." So he's completely cocky. He doesn't respect police. He's just full of himself. And he gets back home. Aunt May and Uncle Ben give him a microscope. Again, the science part of his character. A few days later, he's been making all these appearances, and he gets back home, and there's been a home invasion. Uncle Ben was shot. So it doesn't happen as immediately as it does in the movie either, where it's the same day. The guy immediately gets out of the elevator and shoots Uncle Ben. It happens a few days apart. We see him get angry, and he's out for revenge. He's out to catch that guy. He does not know at this point that that's the same guy who killed Uncle Ben. He's just out looking for the murderer. This is where he's the first time he web swings from building to building. And he follows the police. They track him down to this old building on the docks. And he slips in and he has the guy by surprise. I love this pose, by the way. He hops in the guy and he has him cornered now. Like, and the way that he's drawn, he's like drawn completely surrounding the guy. The guy is like framed between his legs because like Spider-Man's got him backed into a corner and there's nowhere he can go. And this drawing just like completely, shows that metaphor. So he webs the gun, punches the guy in the face, knocks him out. That's when he realizes that this is the guy that I let go. And it's the only time you ever see Spider-Man's pupils in his mask. I love that panel too. Because it's just like, it's kind of odd. They took it away in some printings. Some printings they like recolor or they touch it up and they kind of change the art. I don't like it. I like the idiosyncrasies of, this old Steve Ditko art. But yeah, he realizes that this is the guy who he let go and was responsible for killing Uncle Ben. And he turns him into the police. He doesn't die. That's another thing in the movie. In the movie, he's backing up away from Peter and he slips and he falls out the window and dies on the docks. We see him get turned over and I don't think we ever hear from him again. I'm not sure. I've read a lot of these comics. I don't remember him ever coming back. And so that's like the last we hear of him. And here's where Peter's reflecting back on my fault. If I had only stopped him when I could have, and I didn't, and now Uncle Ben is dead. And he's crying. And here's the last important change that they made from the comic to the movie. It's the narration. It says, "And a lean, silent figure slowly fades into the gathering darkness, aware at last that in this world, with great power, there must also come great responsibility." That line was not something that Uncle Ben said in the original comic. This is the narrator speaking to us. So basically, Stan Lee's voice. I think this was not a mantra in the original comic book that like an Uncle Ben saying. This was not something that anyone has said. Peter never reflects on with great power comes great responsibility like he does all the time in the movies now. Until a legend is born and a new name added to the roster of those who make the world of fantasy the most exciting realm of all. The book was canceled after this issue, but after the success of Spider-Man, he got his own spin-off book, and they kicked it off with a crossover with the Fantastic Four, which was their other, high-profile book. And maybe I'll cover this one too. But let me know what you think. It's interesting to see the changes that they make from, adapting, an 11-page story to a feature film. A lot of things had to be changed for time, for, to make things simpler, easier to understand, just sort of streamlining the whole story. And they also add, of course, the other half of the movie is the Green Goblin portion, which is a much later comic. Much, much later. That's the John Romita Sr. run. So let me know what you think, and keep watching for a new video. I'm going to start making them. I'm going to try and have 2 new videos a week. So keep an eye out for the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.